Rahim, Biology 5090, June 18, paper 11. This is the second video, which is question 21 to 40. Question 21, the diagram shows a section through an eye. Which part is the receptor for the stimulus that results in a change in the size of the pupil? You see, when somebody shines a torch in your eyes, or you enter a place where there's a lot of bright light, or you suddenly from inside the room, dark room, you go into broad daylight, or it's a lot of a very uh, sunny day and you go out in the sun. So suddenly you are exposed to a lot of light, and when that light is perceived by the retina, you see, you have light receptor cells in the retina. When the retina perceives that extreme light intensity, then impulses go to the brain through the optic nerve, and then the brain sends impulses to the muscles of the iris. This is the iris here. So which part is the receptor for the stimulus? It has to be part D. Why? Because D is the fovea, where the light is perceived, and then information goes to the brain, and then the brain sends impulses through motor neurons to the muscles of the iris, and then the iris circular muscles contract and radial muscles relax and the pupil constricts. So please understand this. Which part is the receptor for the stimulus that results in a change in the size of the pupil? The pupil size changes in response to light. More light, pupil constricts. Less light, pupil dilates. So you have to be very clear on this. Question number 22. The diagram shows the brain in vertical section. Which structure coordinates the menstrual cycle? Now, you know, in the menstrual cycle, we have hormones FSH, LH, and the other two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, which are produced by the ovary. And the FSH and the LH is produced by the pituitary gland, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. So they are produced by the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland, you can see the labeling you have to understand. See, this is the cerebellum, which controls posture, coordination, and balance. D is the cerebrum, which controls memory, intelligence, reasoning ability, and acquired skills. B is, of course, the medulla, which controls breathing rate, body temperature, and heartbeat. So they were all different things. This was wrong, this was wrong, and this was wrong. And so the only answer to it which was correct was the pituitary gland was this part which you knew if you had labeled it. Then coming to question 23, which of these is a reflex action? Increasing the blood glucose level by eating rice. That's not a reflex action. Lifting a book off the table by contracting your arm muscles. You just want to pick the book, so there's no, in a reflex, there's a stimulus and then there's a response. So preventing an insect from flying into your eye by blinking. Suddenly you feel this eye is coming, this insect's coming into me and is going to attack my eye. So you blink, using your brain to work out the answer to a problem, but there's no stimulus and there's no response. In a reflex action, it's an automatic response to a stimulus. 24. Which bones meet at the elbow joint and what kind of movement do they allow? Now you know this is the humerus. And then there is the ulna, which I always say is the U-shaped. And then there is the radius. So it says which bones meet at the elbow joint and what kind of movement do they allow? So it's ulna and the humerus. This is the humerus. This is the ulna. This is the U, which I always say. This is the U for the ulna. And this is the radius. So ulna and the humerus, and it allows movement in one plane only. So you have to understand the three planes and the one plane. Shoulder joint, three planes, elbow joint, one plane. Then coming on to question number 25, the diagram shows the percentage of injecting and non-injecting drug users who suffer from HIV/AIDS. HIV is the name of the virus, AIDS is the name of the disease in a particular part of the world. Percentage of users suffering, and these are who? These are the percentage of injecting and non-injecting users, drug users who suffer from AIDS. Now the injecting users are something like 15%, while the others are only 5%. So this one is 5%, this is a percentage, and this one is 15%. And the 15% people are the injecting users, and the non-injecting users are the 5%. So what accounts for the difference between the two groups of drug users? Condoms are used more often by injective drug users. Injecting drugs is most common in areas of dense population. There are more injecting drug users than non-injecting in this part of the world. The same needle may be used by several injecting drug users. Well, that's the main reason, because they share needles. And when they share needles, and it's the needle, not the syringe, please remember. When they share needles, well, that's how they pass on the disease to each other, because it's a blood-borne disease. Question 26. Penicillin is produced by the fungus Penicillium. The fungus name is Penicillium. The name of the antibiotic is penicillin. The stages involved are listed. Corn and yeast are added to the fungus. Penicillin is extracted. Penicillin is secreted by the fungus, and the product is filtered. So you have to understand is that, of course, one would be corn and yeast are added to the fungus, to this fungus Penicillium. Then third, penicillin is secreted by the fungus. Then four, the product is filtered, and then number two is penicillin is extracted. So that is why the answers was 1, 3, 4, and 2. You see, you have to understand is penicillin is extracted would have to be the last one. So it was either this one or it was this one. And then you have to figure out which one was which. So these are some simple ways by which you figure out things. Then coming to question 27, which is a very long question. Which table shows the features of a bacteria, fungi, and viruses? Well, in viruses, you've got to understand there's only one thing. There is no cell membrane, no nucleus, no cell wall. So viruses would not have any of those things. So when you look at the different diagrams, A, B, C, D, only either it could have been this one, because viruses have nothing. They have no cell membrane, no nucleus, no cell wall. So they have nothing. Or it could have been this one. Now, then you look at the other which are correct. So bacteria does have a cell membrane, but it does not have a nucleus. And it does have a cell wall. Fungi have all the three, cell membrane and nucleus, because what is it? Fungus is a eukaryote. Fungi can be multicellular or unicellular. Like yeast is a fungus, but it's unicellular. Mushroom is a fungus, but it's multicellular. So this is what you have to understand why the answer to this was D. This is why you have to understand it. You don't have to sort of memorize it. You have to understand it. Now let's understand the question. This is question number 28. The graph shows changes in the population of plant and animal planktons in a lake. Now let's look at the plant one. This is the plant one. So let's look at the plant one. The plant's population size is more, it's increasing, then it's decreasing, then it's increasing, then it's decreasing, and so on like this. Because this is the population size. So plant planktons. And then let's look at the animal planktons. Now the animal planktons, you see, they are always less. Population size is always less, and then the graph of population size increasing is after the plant population increases. So then it is decreasing, and then of course as the plant population here increases, then there's a slight increase here, and then it's like this. Now let's look at the two graphs. Now it says consider the following statement in relation to the data provided by the graph. Population changes in animal planktons lag behind similar changes in plant plankton. You see, the plant planktons, you see, as you can see here, the plant planktons has increased here. and then the animal plankton has increased here, so it lags behind. Look at the time frame. March, April, mid-March or mid-April. So population changes in animal plankton lag behind. The animal planktons is this one, which we have colored in red. Lag behind similar changes in plant plankton because the animals feed on the plants. Into which category does the statement fall? It is a reasonable interpretation of the data. It is a restatement of the data, not an interpretation. No. It is contradicted or not supported by the data. Yes, it is supported by the data. It says contradicted or not supported. More data are required in order for this interpretation to be made. No, it's a reasonable data. You can see the population size increasing. First, the plant population increases and then the animal population increasing. So there is a sort of a correlation. Question 29. Which sequence is a food chain? Now, in a food chain, you know there's a producer, then there's a herbivore, then a carnivore, and then a carnivore. So it couldn't be, producer has to be first. So it could have either been C or D. It couldn't have been this one. These were wrong. Food chains never have decomposers. Please remember, food chains never have decomposers. That is why, that is the biggest way that you can pick it. It's not a food chain. They never have decomposers. Then coming on to question number 30. Which stage of the carbon cycle depends on the presence of bacteria and fungi in the soil? You know, in the carbon cycle, there are four things. Number one is photosynthesis, which is going to take up the carbon dioxide. But that should be equal to three other things: RCD, respiration, combustion, and decomposition. So it says which stage of the carbon cycle depends on the presence of bacteria and fungi in the soil, and that was only and only decomposition. None of the others need. In fact, combustion is fossil fuel. Fossil fuel is never decomposed. It's just pressed, remains under pressure for millions of years and becomes fossil fuel, and then that is burnt, and that's combustion. Photosynthesis is light energy to chemical energy. Respiration is the release of energy from food substances in living cells. Then coming to question 31. Which term correctly describes the malarial pathogen? Now this is a syllabus point. It's parasite. The malarial pathogen is a parasite. The malarial pathogen is actually a plasmodium, and this is a protozoa. It's not a bacteria, it's not an insect, it's not a vector. It says describes the malarial pathogen. Pathogen means the disease causing microorganism, and that is plasmodium, and that is a protozoa. That is not bacteria, not fungus, not virus. Not bacteria, not virus, not fungus. Please remember this. Even if you don't know it before, you should know it now. Which two air pollutants contribute to acid rain? Sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen. This is again a syllabus point. If you had gone through the syllabus, you would know this was the point in the syllabus. So these contribute to acid rain. Sulfuric acid and nitric acid are formed because of these two. So that is why it is going to result in acid rain. Then coming on to question number 33. Now that's a rather long diagram. The diagram shows the chromosomes in a cell. Now you can see this is, now I'm going to just color them. So this is the one, and then this is the one which goes with it. And then we have this one and this one. And let's do another color for the third one. So there are 1, 2, 3 pairs. And by this time, which diagram shows the product of one division of the cell by mitosis? So 3 pairs, so these were actually 6, but now there are 12 chromatids. And if this cell has to divide by mitosis, So if this cell has to divide by mitosis, then two cells have to be formed with 6 in each. This, of course, had 12. Why it had 12? Because there is 4 chromatids. Original cell would have just had, if I had to draw the original cell, then it would just have had 2 greens, 2 reds, and 2 yellow. But look at this diagram now. What have they shown you? They have shown you there are 4 reds. So these red have actually formed copies of it. And then you had the yellows. So then this would have formed a copy as well, because this cell is just going to divide by mitosis. And then we had this one. This had a copy as well. And this is what we see here. So which diagram shows the product of one division of the cell by mitosis? So you had to understand is that it would have had to have by mitosis, it couldn't have had 4 cells. It would have to have 2 cells. So this was wrong. This was totally wrong. So which diagram shows a product of one division of the cell by mitosis? One division of the cell by mitosis. So the answer to this was B, as you can see. Why? Because after one division of the cell by mitosis, 2 cells will have been formed. So it could have either been this or this, but this is wrong. Why is this wrong? Because this has lesser number of chromosomes than the one which was originally shown in the original cell. 34. The diagram shows the stigma, style, and ovary of a flower. Where does fertilization take place? Now, D, this is the pollen. C is the pollen tube growing into the style. And B is the tip of the pollen tube. And A is when it has entered the ovule and then it is just about to fuse with the female gamete. Where does fertilization take place? Inside the ovule. So that's why the answer is A. Then coming on to question number 35. In which part of the human female reproductive system does a zygote start to divide to form a ball of cells? Well, the zygote actually develops in the oviduct. It forms in the oviduct and then it divides into a ball of cells by mitosis and then will move towards the uterus and will implant in the uterus. And question 36. What is the best way to prevent the spread of the human immunodeficiency virus? The rest of it all is wrong. Keep fed, do not drink, have regular tests, no. Use condoms during sexual intercourse. Then question 37, the diagram shows a pair of chromosomes from the same cell. So they have said a gene is found at the point labeled P. A gene is found here. Say this is the gene for eye color, hair color, blood group. So a gene is found at P, but then it says in a heterozygous individual. So heterozygous means big A, small a. So if then this means this is big A, then Q has to be small a, because it says in a heterozygous individual, what will be found at the equivalent position labeled Q? And this was labeled Q here. So this is what you have to understand. It will be a different allele of the same gene. A different gene of the same allele, that's rubbish. The same gene of the same allele, no, it's rubbish. A different allele of a different gene, no. The alleles are of the same gene. So this is they're just trying to test your English skills. Actually, they're not testing biology as far as I'm concerned. Then coming to question number 38. Which characteristics show continuous and discontinuous variation in humans? Continuous variation is height, and attached or free earlobe is discontinuous variation. You see, blood groups is discontinuous, but then free or attached earlobe is not continuous. So you had to figure this out. I'm sure this was not a very difficult question. Then question number 39, which statements about natural selection are correct? Natural selection can lead to better adapted surviving species. Then natural selection can lead to extinction of species. Yes, because you see, the better adapted will survive, and the others, which are chunkers, will not survive, and they will be dead and gone. So that's what I say. Better adapted, those who can adapt to online studies will be the winners. The others will be extinct species. Then the third point which they asked you was natural selection can lead to gene mutations occurring. No, it's the other way around. Mutations can lead to natural selection. So natural selection can lead to gene mutations occurring. So that was wrong also. So that is why this was true, true, and then this was of course false. So natural selection, there is survival of the fittest. Those better adapted would survive. Those which are not better adapted will die. So that is the extinction of species. Here that point comes here. And natural selection lead to gene, no, gene mutations can result in natural selection. Okay. Then we come to the last question. Question 40. Which statements about genetically engineered plants show potential benefits? Number one, the increased yield from genetically engineered plants allow a smaller area of land to be farmed because we have more crop, more rice, more wheat, more sugar cane. So that's good. It's an advantage. Show potential benefits. Then genetically engineered plants may have improved nutritional value. As some genetically engineered plants have more vitamin D in them, so that will prevent vitamin D deficiency and that will make the world a better place because people suffering from vitamin D deficiency will decrease. Then number three, some plants can be genetically modified to give resistance to diseases. Like, some plants suffer from fungal diseases and the crop yield is reduced. The leaves just curl up. So 1, 2, and 3 were all correct. Okay, but then let's look at the others which are incorrect. Because you should also understand why 4, 5, and 6 were incorrect. Cross pollination with weeds could produce new variety of weeds. Well, that is not a benefit anything. What would we do with the weeds? Weeds are useless. We want the cash crops, the sugar cane, the wheat, and the rice crops. We don't want the other rubbish stuff. Number 5, the use of genetically engineered may explain the increase in allergies in children. No, we've no such proof as yet. There is more research needed on the long-term effects of genetically engineered crops on the environment. Well, there's enough research already, and this is not a benefit. This is, in fact, something which is detrimental or adverse. So that's why the answer was 1, 2, and 3, and the others were all wrong. So, but please, you need to understand this. You need to read up on this chapter on genetic engineering and the benefits of genetic engineering. That completes this paper, and thank you once again. This is the video 2 of it, and this has questions 91 to 40.